Following his first appearance in chapter 183, Shinji Hirako had quickly become a fan favorite character for good reason, and this can be attributed to his cool, powerful, and mysterious demeanor during his introduction, as well as the intriguing backstory that Kubo carefully creates for him later on during the Turn Back the Pendulum arc. All of this setup gives Shinji a valid place within the Bleach universe, but also giving him a great end goal for where his character ends up when he takes back his original position as a captain of the Gotei 13. Everything was perfectly laid out for Shinji to become a character with numerous highlights in the Bleach story, but unfortunately the fact that you're watching this video right now probably indicates that you're aware that this didn't happen. Despite being a character who is perfectly tailored to be a major player, he ends up being relegated to the background, and aside from appearing just so a random Quincy can defeat him, he never really gets a shining moment for himself throughout the story. I mean, things are so bad with Shinji's character that unlike Rose and Kensei, who at least got to show off their Bankai, Shinji never had the chance to reveal the second release of his Zanpakuto, which is just crazy to think about. So following the conclusion of the Bleach manga, fan speculation had went wild. People had theorized and talked about what Shinji's Bankai could possibly be, and what abilities that it would entail, but fortunately this didn't go on for too long, as Kubo had decided to answer this question for the fans with the advent of supplementary information that is revealed about Shinji's Bankai within the Can't Fear Unworld light novels. In this video, I'm going to be explaining everything that we learn about Shinji Hirako's fascinating Bankai, so make sure you stick around to the end of this video so that you're fully clued up on how Shinji's Bankai works. Before the video begins, only 12% of the people who watch my content are subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy these videos, then subscribe and stick around for more content just like this. Now let's get back to the topic of the video. While it is very disappointing that Shinji didn't live up to our expectations, what we ended up getting within the Can't Fear Unworld light novels is better than nothing which we had received from the ending of the manga. Some of you may be wondering, why was it necessary to have Shinji's Bankai revealed in a light novel? A particular complaint often comes up during discussions of the Can't Fear Unworld light novels, with some fans saying that these light novels exist as proof that Kubo had failed as a writer with Bleach's final arc. Now this would be a fair point if we ignore all of the factors surrounding why the finale of the 1000-Year Blood War arc was rushed, from Kubo's declining physical and mental health to his growing fear of not being able to finish the Bleach story. There were several story beats that were trimmed down or even cut entirely. While I'm not asking anyone to forgive this, the existence of these light novels doesn't only just flesh out certain parts of the Bleach manga, but they also expand upon ideas that had already existed within the story, and they actually do a really good job of spelling out the details of the Bleach world to the fans. So it is clear that all of the introductions and revelations made within the Can't Fear Unworld light novels were always intended to be there from the very start, and they would have made it into the story if Kubo was still healthy. So it makes very little sense to use these light novels as a reason to discredit Kubo. Now with this disclaimer out of the way, let's get back to the topic of the video, which is Shinji Hirako's Bankai. I'll be talking about the events that had led to its activation, as well as going over its strengths and weaknesses, and along with my own personal analysis on the intricacies of Shinji's Bankai ability. It all kicks off for Shinji when he senses Grimmjow's sinister reiatsu within the Soul Society. Having fought Grimmjow in the past, he immediately rushes to the location in order to prevent him from causing any chaos. This is a nice callback to the fact that Shinji's first actual fight in the story was against Grimmjow, who he had effortlessly defeated in chapter 236. He actually humiliated Grimmjow so badly that he was about to release his resurrection. I have always wondered whether if Shinji could only casually defeat Grimmjow because he was missing an arm and was already heavily injured by Ichigo. So I'm assuming that Shinji had decided to head towards Grimmjow because he was confident that he could take him on in a fight, and additionally because he knows how much of a threat Grimmjow poses to the Soul Society. On his way to the location, he notices a seemingly familiar spiritual pressure heading towards the same direction, but upon getting closer to the spiritual signature, he realizes that it's a completely unfamiliar face. This individual is revealed to be Hikone, who was in fact heading towards Grimmjow's location. They revealed to Shinji that they had previously fought Grimmjow within Hueco Mundo, and that they were the servant of Tokinada Tsunayashiro. But the most shocking thing that Hikone reveals to Shinji was that they were going to become the next Soul King, and had actually attacked Hueco Mundo in an attempt to become its king as a preliminary step. This leads to to Shinji starting to suspect that something was definitely wrong. This leads to him getting caught up in a fight between Grimmjow and Luffy, which would soon devolve into a free-for-all between the arrancar, my re-zombified Quincy, and the fullbringers. And surprisingly, even in these parts of the story, Shinji doesn't actually do anything here. He doesn't fight, and he only observes and dodges any attacks that are sent his way. Now, after catching up on the current events and figuring out the attack taking place in the world of the living, Shinji suggests that they contact Hachigen in order to deactivate the barrier surrounding Karakura Town. And following this, we don't see him do much until the time comes for the final battle. After they all figure out the details of Tokinada's diabolical plan, the available captains, which include Shinji, gather up to go and face off against Tokinada and Hikone in the Valley of Screams. If there's one thing that I really love about the Can't For Your Own World light novels, it's how it makes use of the different aspects of the Bleach universe that didn't get as much attention within the manga, like the Valley of Screams. Seeing it used as the site for the final battle is nothing short of fantastic. It also feels like a cool callback to when the Shinigami had arrived at the Royal Palace in order to fight Yhwach and his Quincy. The final fight actually starts in volume 2 of the light novels. When the Shinigami arrive in Tokinada's new version of the Soul King's palace, they're immediately assaulted by a myriad of hollow-like monsters. Kinpachi being Kinpachi takes the lead and proceeds to slice and dice through them, and incidentally creating a new path to the tower in the sky. The surrounding Quincy and Shinigami begin to consider whether to fight them or to make their own path towards the tower. During this moment of consideration, Shinji interjects that considering how quickly the monsters were starting to surround them, it would be wise for them to go ahead and follow Kinpachi, who had already started cutting a path for himself. This had implied that they would leave him behind with the monsters. These monsters were described as being fast enough to catch up to them if they had tried to run. So while this was technically a reasonable suggestion, it almost sounded like Shinji was definitely going to die if they had left him behind. This remark shocks everyone who is present, and they start to question if they should actually go through with this idea. But after a quick exchange of glances between Shunsui and Shinji, Shunsui convinces everyone that they should go through with this plan and to begin to chase after Kinpachi. Right before Shunsui takes off, he asks Shinji if he was about to do something, to which Shinji confirms that he is sure that it would work where they are, so he'd intended to try it. Shunsui then asks him to try his best to catch up once he finishes up with them. One of my favorite things about this dialogue is the fact that Shunsui confirms that due to his role as the head captain, he has in fact read up on all of the other captains' Bankai and Shikai abilities, and his knowledge of exactly what Shinji was planning on doing was really cool to see. Not to mention, this is a very wholesome exchange between these two characters, and I loved seeing how much faith he appears to have in Shinji's power. Now getting back to the fight, following the exchange between Shunsui and Shinji, they begin to follow the trail of destruction that Kinpachi has left behind him. After the others have left, Shinji then says his release command and activates his Shikai. Now we don't see what happens immediately afterwards until quite a number of pages later. When the fight returns to Shinji, we find out that he had in fact activated Sakanade and was using its power on the hordes of monsters. Using its incredible sensory inversion abilities, Shinji had begun to invert the directions the monsters were moving in, causing them to not only move in the wrong direction but also find themselves attacking each other. Considering the fact that Sakanade's range was limited, the horde would move as intended when they began their advance against Shinji, but as soon as they got within range of Sakanade, all their attacks and formations would go haywire. This had continued for a while until a peculiar thing had started to happen. The hypnotized monsters had gradually begun to coordinate again. With each passing moment, their strikes and swipes become more and more accurate. Shinji had noticed that an extension resembling an eyelid covered their eyes. By intentionally blinding themselves, they had become immune to Shinji's hypnosis. They had used spiritual sense to detect Shinji's position and echolocation to scout the terrain. They used this as substitute for their eyes. Shinji starts to worry when he realizes that they were now heading for him without a problem, or at least that was what he had wanted us to think, as he then reveals that he can also invert the sounds that they hear, and this essentially disrupts all of the monsters' plans. In desperation, the monsters start to rapidly spawn new instances of themselves in an attempt to overwhelm Shinji with numbers, ensuring that he couldn't hypnotize all of them. Now this tactic had proved to be effective as he realizes that the battle is about to take a turn for the worse. Not too long after this, he was surrounded by hundreds of thousands of these monsters. However, he remains calm and reveals that he had prepared for this outcome. He smiles as he recalls Gerard Valkyrie's words and claims that he was going to perform a miracle of his own, as he then activates his Bankai. Now we don't immediately see it take effect until volume 3 of the Can't For Your Own World light novels. When we do, it is quite the sight. Shinji is shown standing on a flower-like construct with petals enclosing him. They open up to reveal an unscathed Shinji, who expresses disappointment that the Quincy's didn't attack in an organized group so that he could have defeated them with his own Bankai. We then realize that Shinji was surrounded by a white, motionless shroud. These in fact were the corpses of the monsters that were attacking him. Strangely, they didn't die from a massive attack by Shinji, but rather by their own hands. Using the power of his Bankai called Sakashimi Yokoshimi Happo Fusagari, he had switched their perception of friend and foe, making them perceive each other as enemies, and this had resulted in the mutual slaughter of the entire horde of monsters. Shinji's Bankai is extremely powerful, but it has one major drawback. He cannot use it when he has allies within its range, as they will also be indiscriminately affected by it, and this is similar to Shunsui's Bankai. This makes it a power that is best suited for fighting multiple enemies at once when he is on his own. It is a really creative ability that could have only been thought of by Kubo. With a character whose entire theme is inversion, it makes perfect sense that his Shikai is best used for fighting strong enemies, while his Bankai is best used against numerous weaker enemies, which is a total inversion of the way that the Shikai and Bankai abilities typically work. The flower-like construct is actually his Zanbakudo in its Bankai state, and once the inversion is activated, it encloses its petals around Shinji in order to protect him from the ensuing chaos. It then opens once everyone is dead. It would be intriguing to see how this ability would have worked on actual people instead of mindless monsters. One might wonder if their memories tied to their former allies would be altered. There are quite a few questions about the intricacies of this ability, including what would be the state of mind of a person who is under the influence of Shinji's Bankai. Do they enter a murderous frenzy and start attacking their former friends? Or does the hypnotism not only warp their perception of their enemies, but also their motives for fighting? As a result of the effects of the Bankai, how do they perceive Shinji, who has now become their ally in their minds? It's undoubtedly a power that requires another demonstration for us to fully understand its capabilities. It would be great to see this power animated at some point, if not through an additional scene in the anime, then perhaps through the anime adaptation of the Can't Fear Unworld light novels, or a reappearance of this Bankai during the Hell arc of the Bleach manga. There really are a lot of possibilities when it comes to the content found within the Can't Fear Unworld light novels. I hope that after the 1000 Year Blood War arc is animated, we can get these novels adapted into another anime series or a movie at the very least. We've now reached the point of the video where I want to hand over the discussion to all of you. What do you think about the ultimate inversion Bankai of Shinji Hirako? In my opinion, if given the right circumstances, it truly is an incredibly broken ability, and I'm just grateful that we were shown Shinji's Bankai in one way or another, thanks to the Can't Fear Unworld light novels. I look forward to reading all of your thoughts on this fascinating Bankai, and lastly, thank you for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next Bleach Explained video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.